We are going live to YouTube. And you could speak, Rob.
You look amazing in that John Deere hat, Judah.
Thank you, Rob. And on that note, I want to welcome everybody to the world according to Ben Stein. Ben will be with us in a minute or two. I want to thank everybody that's been downloading the show. It's been amazing. We are blessed and grateful for you doing it and leaving the great reviews, except for the one that insulted me. I'm still okay with that. Insults, why not, Rob?
So we have a rule on our show that hate mail and hate phone calls go straight to the front of the line.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. I agree with that 100%. And as you could hear Ben Stein in the background. But how was your 4th of July, by the way, Rob?
It was great. We had a wonderful fireworks display both on the 4th of July and the day before.
Yeah, the best fireworks ever in North Idaho. Ever in North Idaho. Ever.
And welcome as always, never a clean opening on this show. Thank you, Ben Stein.
But on the other hand, I don't have a dirty opening.
On that note, I want to welcome everybody to the world according to that man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. We're joined tonight from 93.1 BAM, WIBC, the president of Conservative Talk Radio himself, Rob Kendall, who was in the middle of sharing before he was rudely interrupted about his 4th of July. How was it, sir?
It was great. I sat around and watched golf, which is what I'm doing right now before the start of The World According to Ben Stein.
God bless you, sir.
Yes, and of course, this show would not be complete without actor, writer, provocateur, sometimes late to the party, doctor, mathematician, statistician. I mentioned doctor too early, but you are a doctor.
Doctor of laws.
Dr. Feelgood, America's humble servant, Benjamin Jeremy.
Yes, exactly. Very, very glad to be here, sir. Very glad to be here, sir.
America's humble servant. And it's great that everybody's just chilling in the background of your room and people are just walking through. It's fantastic. It's
like a big happy family.
Yeah, it's just
it's like a compound, Ben.
Yeah.
But how was your 4th, Ben?
It was great. We had an incredible fireworks display. The only problem was that there are lots and lots of insects outside. And when I opened the door to step out on the deck, a lot of them flew inside.
It's rough life.
Yeah, that's not good.
Rough life in Idaho. And by the way, I encourage everybody, other than downloading our podcast, to also download and listen to the new song by Aaron Lewis, Am I the Only One? It's one of the most
I don't even know who that is. Who is that?
You wouldn't know even if I begged you to know. He was a very famous musician, but he just came out with a #1 song, a country song. I encourage everybody to buy it. It's very patriotic. It's a great listen. But let's get ready to go.
Ready to rock and roll.
So right now, they are the government of the United States, and here's the thing, I don't like to invoke Nazi Germany. It's something I never enjoy doing. I don't like to call people Nazis or invoke that imagery, especially considering my family was
both Jewish.
Being Jewish and my family being devastated by it, but the Biden administration going door to door vaccinators. They are.
Now, wait a minute. I want to hear about this, sir. If you don't mind. Please tell me about this in detail.
It's exactly, Ben.
It's so shocking that I can hardly get my mind around it.
It's exactly what I'm saying. They are going door to door to people that haven't been vaccinated and encouraging them to get vaccinated.
How do they know which have been vaccinated and which have not?
Well, you are on a list, right? We are all registered once we went to the store or wherever we got our vaccination from. We're all in the register. We are all in the vaccine registry.
But how do they know the person next to me has not been vaccinated?
I mean, I don't really think
I live
then
at
there's
602 such and such. Well, how do they know somebody at 603 or 605 has not been registered?
Well, they'll go for they'll be like Jehovah's Witnesses. They'll assume everybody hasn't found God and go just door to door.
Okay, that to me is a little hard to believe. Is this in today's Wall Street Journal?
Now, it was in today's Fox News.
Wow, wow, it's really shocking. Really shocking.
So my dad and I came up with a list of questions we're going to ask the people when they come to our house, and I think that'll be fun to play.
I want to hear that. I want to hear this. Let's hear it.
I can't repeat several of them on the YouTube format, Ben, because I don't want to get us pulled off the format. But I think that's what you got to do. You're going to ask us questions. We're going to ask you questions, and let's see who stays on our door the longest.
Okay, can I just know one or two of the questions?
I just think their medical history is completely fair game.
That's good.
Completely fair game.
You lower the window, Stephen, please.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really funny idea. It's like, oftentimes, when you go to the store and they give you a big bill and you pay with 100 and they mark it and then they look at it like this. When they give me the change, oftentimes, I'll do the same thing with the bill.
That's funny.
And it's a very interesting thing to do that to them. Or when people, Rob, when they say, "How are you?" say to them sometimes, respond to them, "It's been a really rough year. I'm having suicidal thoughts," and just for giggles. But Ben, it is a very frightening thing. I think
I'm not quite sure why it is frightening. Why is it frightening?
That the government is going door to door and imposing and asking whether you're vaccinated or not, or encouraging you to get vaccines.
I don't find. I'm not sure. I'm sure you, whom I have known for many years, and I know you to be very smart and very persuasive. I'm sure you are going to answer this question. But why is it frightening?
It's big. It's government getting into our. That's literally the definition of government getting into our homes.
I know, but so is income tax.
Yes.
So is property tax, and so is state.
Okay. So I'll tell you what, Ben. Do you want the government then to come to your home and ask if you're a Jew? Do you want the government to come?
Entirely different.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No. Okay, I'll tell you what. Do you want the government to come and ask you if you're a member of BLM, or you believe Black Lives Matter, or do you believe any of that stuff? No, it's not different. It's the exact same thing.
No, it is not the exact same thing. It's a totally different thing.
It's government intrusion in our personal lives.
I don't think it is. I think it's government trying, perhaps indirectly, to save lives. Does the vaccine work the way it's supposed to work? That I'm not at all sure of. You and I both know we've had some very bad experiences with the vaccine. But is it a bad idea to encourage people to get vaccinated? I don't think so. And with all due respect, I don't think there is any evidence in a free society of the government following up questions about whether or not people have been vaccinated by putting them in cattle cars and sending them to death camps.
Like I said, I'm not going to make that reference. What I'm saying though, Ben, is once you allow them to do this, where does it stop?
Let's say it stops there.
Ben, I can't tell if you're playing devil's advocate.
No, I'm not playing devil's advocate. I don't think there's anything wrong with them asking if people have had their vaccine. If they hit people if they have not had it, that's terrible.
I'm shocked that you don't find this to be wrong.
I have no problem with it at all. It's really, really, really important that people get vaccinated, and
it's their own choice.
And with all due respect, my dear friend, you have not said a word about the government saying you have to get it. Now you've told us you were not vaccinated, and now you have to get vaccinated. You have not said one word about that.
Obviously, they can't force you.
Okay, well then that's all the difference.
I have to disagree with you on this one, but Rob, go ahead.
You're supposed to disagree with me.
I think we can all agree there's a reason they're asking, right? I mean, there's a reason they want to know, and the question is, what will they do with that information? And we're reading several publications today that said that there are governments, not just private businesses, but governments now across the world, and we know bad government spreads like the plague, that are going to require people or pushing to require people to have this vaccine to enter back into society. And so we know the government is doing something with it. The question is, based on the history of this government, some better than others, but throughout our 240-year history, do we really trust government to have this information and do good things with it?
I don't trust them to do that, but I also don't like the idea of the virus spreading. And I have observed, and I get maybe you don't observe this, Judah, because you live in a different part of LA from me. But I've had people from the Census Bureau come to my door repeatedly of my house in Malibu, which, by the way, is a very modest house by Malibu standards, and come to the door and ask me all kinds of questions, very, very personal questions about my life and my family's life over the decades. And I have no problem with it at all. I don't understand what is wrong with them asking questions. If I say, and they always say to me at any point, if you don't want to continue the interview, you don't have to. But I don't see what's wrong with them wanting to know who hasn't gotten the vaccine. And that I have no problem with them saying, with all due respect, Mr. Stein or Mr. Stein, or whoever's answering the door, Tommy Stein, whoever's answering the door, I think you might want to consider getting the vaccine.
I believe at this point, Ben, they've already done enough pushes for everybody to get vaccinated. Everybody knows that they have the ability to get vaccinated, and everybody that has decided not to get vaccinated has not gotten vaccinated, not because somebody hasn't come to their front door and heavily suggested they do.
With great respect, Judah, we had quite a lively discussion on this show a few days ago about an issue closely related to this. And that issue was, is there data that shows that giving people the vaccine lowers the incidence of the virus? And I believe that the person who was with whom we were discussing this, who was not Rob, but some other kindly soul, said, yes, there is very powerful data linking being vaccinated with lower rates of the virus.
But again, it's not the government's job. It's just...
oh boy, it wasn't the government's job.
I mean, I'm really shocked that you're okay with door-to-door vaccine salesmen.
With all due respect, sir, it was not the government's job to send soldiers into Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and so forth to fight a civil war to end a practice which, to be sure, thoroughly vile and horrible, was allowed by the Constitution. So there is certainly a precedent for government going around and interfering with people's lives. It was not until fairly recently that it was the government's job to collect people's income tax, and yet that was done as well. So I think we can say things that were not government's job gradually get to be government's job. And I frankly, I would prefer that people did not go door to door and ask if you have had the vaccine. But I don't think it's a serious infringement upon our civil liberties. I'm incomparably more concerned with the people going around asking who was involved in the January 6th tour of the Capitol.
That's next. Okay, it's once you start going door to door, Ben, it doesn't stop.
How do you know?
Okay,
that?
You're right. I have no anecdotal data. I have no proof. For some reason, you're playing devil's advocate or whatever it is on this tonight.
I have no problem whatsoever with people coming to my door and asking me if I've been vaccinated.
I absolutely do. Rob,
I know you do. I know you do. But I think we have a real problem. The vaccine will help people not get this virus. The virus is a pain in the neck, and it can kill people. Although it has not killed as many people as was originally predicted, it still has killed quite a number of people. Where is the danger in encouraging people to get the vaccine?
Rob?
Well, so first of all, my job is to share huge portions of my life with people on a giant FM blowtorch every day. So I'm pretty public that I have not been vaccinated. I don't trust the government. I'm not anti-vaxxer. I've had many other vaccinations, but this hasn't been approved by the government. So what business is it of the government to
By the FDA, you mean?
By the FDA. It has not gone through the process. It's not FDA approved. It hasn't gone through the 3-year trial process. So what they're basically saying is the whole FDA approval process is a giant crock of crap. Get it approved by the FDA first, and then we'll talk. It's still none of your business. And it's, look, I'm comfortable sharing it. I've not been vaccinated. I don't trust the government. This thing hasn't gone through the right stuff. A lot of people have had ramifications from it. If you want to do it, God bless you. That is totally your right as a person, and I support you. But it's really none of the government's business whether I've done a medical procedure or not that they haven't approved through their own process.
But the government takes a huge role in public health issues. Huge role. And if I may make this point, I think it's enormously more intrusive, enormously more invasive, and just plain evil for the government to intrude on people's lives and tell them that it's okay for them to have abortions, which is the murder of a totally innocent baby. So if we're going to talk about moral evils involving public health and the government, why don't we start with that? That's an incomparably more clear-cut issue.
Well, I agree with you, Ben. Abortion is horrific and terrible. And I'm a person that believes that Roe versus Wade was wrongly decided and should be overturned. So I will have that same conversation. The point is they haven't even approved. The government, by their own standards, hasn't even approved this thing. Young people are dying from getting it. And yet they're really putting passive aggressive fear at the very best into people by going door to door, asking about something that if you've had it, which you have, and God bless you, that's totally your right, then I'm really of no threat to you. If I'm still a threat to you, then the vaccine is a giant crock of crap. So you got to pick one, right?
Oh, wait a second. We had this discussion on our show just a very few days.
Yeah, Rob was on it.
Then Rob was on. God bless you, Rob. That there was very clear and overwhelming data that getting the vaccine lowered the incidence of the disease. So let's just say we know that, and that's great. We know that. And why not? Why shouldn't the government take advantage of that data and tell people, we're not going to tell you what you have to do, but your chances of surviving this pandemic are greatly improved by having the vaccine. I guess I don't understand what's wrong with that. I mean, that doesn't strike me as something out of Orwell. It doesn't strike me as something out of
It strikes me 100% out of something like that, of the government sending people door to door, asking them and intruding on them, and especially to what Rob said. If a certain amount of the population is already has the vaccine, the rest of the people are no danger to the others. They might be a danger to themselves.
Well, if people answer the door and say, I've already had the vaccine and now I'm busy making a cake, that's fine. I mean, they can. There have been instances of people barging in and saying you're under arrest for not having the vaccine.
I know.
So Ben, in turn, can I ask the people who come to my door, have you had the HPV vaccine? And they should be required to answer to me.
That's a very good question. I would say that's a different issue because that is a sexual relations issue and that is a more personal issue than a flu or a virus. And I think it's that is a different issue, but it's a very smart question. And I think it bears some thought, but I think it's a different question. But again, it bears some thought.
But where does it end? That's the scary thing. And I don't see that. I see that as being the bigger picture here, as Ben, is where does it end? We were saying they're coming into our living rooms with everything else. Now they're literally coming into our homes. And I don't believe you. I know you're going to say the income tax but that's not a virus, Ben. If you want to go by the metrics, what you just said to Rob, then income tax isn't a virus.
Right, and that's not a virus. There's no doubt about it. Although it's very painful.
Yes, it is. But it's not. But on the same token, it's not a virus, Ben.
Right, but when people come into your house and ask you if you've been vaccinated against the virus, I'm afraid I don't see how that hurts you. It seems to me it can only help you. The only thing it can do is help you to understand that your chance of surviving is greater if you've had the virus shot, and if you have not had the virus shot, you might want to think about whether or not why you're not getting it.
Ben, you are a person who reveres and loves the Constitution like no other, so I will phrase it like this. In the enumerated powers clause, which spells out what the federal government can do, is there anywhere that it says it can go door to door of those 18 things and ask you if you have had a shot that has not been approved by the government's own agency?
There's also nothing in there that says that you can take up arms to keep people from owning slaves. And there's an awful lot. There are an awful lot of things that the government does that are not enumerated powers of the government. There's nothing. There was until quite recently nothing that said that you could be drafted to fight the wars of the United States of America. So that is not in the enumerated powers either. And so that's a good question. And there's nothing in the enumerated powers that says the government can prevent people from owning automatic weapons, and yet that is enforced by the government as well. So there are plenty of things that government does that are not in the enumerated powers. The enumerated powers, we passed that door a long, long time ago.
So do we just keep going and just saying because we did it once?
No. But we say everything. Since you asked me about my revering the Constitution, I'll tell you I revere it to the extent that I understand that it is as the saying goes, a living document, and I know. That horrible phrase is sometimes very wildly misused and used to justify terrible infringements upon people's liberty. But sometimes it is used to do good things too. I would rather people just watch a TV show about the statistics of what the effects of getting the shot are. That seems to me would be preferable. But
well, you raise a good point, Ben. So Ben, you raise a good point. So when they're going door to door as salesmen of the vaccine, are they listing, as you call them, the effects? Are they telling people
I think that's a very very good point. And as you and I both had terrible effects from the shot, no, the shot can have terrible effects, and indeed. Very much indeed, very much indeed, without question indeed, people should be told that there have been plenty of people who did have bad effects on the shots. I absolutely agree with that, and I think you're raising a really good point, because with all the ads I see saying you should get the shot, you should get the shot, you should get the shot, I have yet to see one that says you have a damn good chance of feeling pretty damn lousy for a very good long while after you get the shot.
And we still do not have the statistics on the vaccine, obviously, since it's only been 3 or 4 months. We really don't have the data that we need. So, I mean, I still believe people have to make up their own choices. And I mean, obviously we're going to disagree on this. I don't know when the government stops once you allow them to start. We've seen that over and over again.
Well, Jude, I want to ask you, what is it about someone ringing your doorbell?
Okay, last week they want you. Okay, you know what it is, Ben? Last week they want you to rat on your friends on Facebook. Okay?
That's a very, very different matter. Okay, let me go back. That is a different matter. That's a political matter in which you are asking people to infringe upon other people's political rights and to interfere with their political privacy. And that's very, very different from asking people if they have taken advantage of a public health breakthrough in order to improve and elongate and prolong their lives.
And Ben, what if they say no and they're put on a list? What if they say no?
Well, you haven't.
No. I'm saying the program just started. Ben, the program just started.
What if they just shoot them as soon as they come to the
door? But Ben, the program just started.
We don't have any evidence whatsoever.
Well, we don't have any evidence of anything right now. As Rob says, it's not FDA approved. We don't have all the statistics about.
Someone's approving it because they're giving it out like crazy.
The companies have. It's Rob, explain, because I forget.
It received emergency approval. It hasn't gone through the actual FDA process, which means you can use it. But look, either the FDA approval process is a giant crock of crap, and if you want to have that conversation, I'm all game for that things should get approved much faster, fine. But you don't on one hand get to tell me that I can't, me or other people can't take numerous other potentially life-saving drugs because they don't have FDA approval, and yet they just hand this thing out like it's candy. You got to pick one.
Again, and this is a long and important conversation, the FDA's approval process has been criticized for a very long time for being way too slow and being behind the 8 ball and making sure that lots of people who shouldn't die. So that's a real serious issue, and someone obviously has approved it. They wouldn't be giving it out by hundreds of millions if no one approved it. I mean, if that is true.
Well,
But
Ben,
if
here's the
that is
thing.
true,
Remember,
if no one at all has approved it and they're giving out these shots, then something drastically wrong has
okay,
happened.
so
Obviously,
Ben,
someone has approved it.
going by what you're just saying, at the beginning, right, when they came out, and you're the one that keeps on saying it's the effect, they're constantly saying it's the side effect.
Right, and I
When
think
it's
I think that's a lie. I
and
think
how
it's the
that
primary.
okay, so right there we have a lie. So you're saying that you trust these people that are absolute, and we were discussing another medicine the other day that's obviously totally side, but they say it's a side effect, Ben, but it's the absolute effect, and a lot of people are getting, and I know that you're going to say they're not dying, they're just getting viciously ill, and so they're not being honest. So why should we assume they're being honest?
But that's not true. The fact that they do not tell us that there are bad effects from the pill, from the shot, is very unfortunate. If it is also true that the shot has no beneficial effects, then obviously they should not be encouraging people to have it. But there apparently is a great deal of data showing that it does have beneficial effects. Otherwise, why would they be doing it? I mean, I have to assume that it has some beneficial effects. Otherwise, why would they be doing it?
Oh, you
If
mean
I'm
because the government
it's,
never does, and
it's,
you don't
no,
think that?
I don't think we have it. I don't think you could find an historical a historical incident or precedent for a government encouraging people to have a shot, which then killed them all or killed any
No,
large
I'm
number of
not
them.
saying for a shot that Ben. I'm saying we have evidence already multiple times from this administration, and we discussed. You're right. One is political, but them wanting us to rat on each other for our political
And
beliefs.
that is a very different matter.
Why is
Very,
that
very
different? It's
because
the
you're not
same.
asking people because we do not want to interfere in the political sphere with people's political beliefs. We do not want to interfere with that. That those are sacred.
And people's medical beliefs are sacred too.
We're not telling people that they must answer the question or else they're going to be punished. As far as I know,
Well, we don't know
from what you
yet. We
told me,
don't know
they
yet.
don't say to people, by the way, if you don't answer the question, you're going to prison.
Well, we don't know yet. We don't know what list those people will end up on. We don't know. We don't know what they're going to do with that information, Rob. We just don't.
Well,
But,
and if
but
you,
if that wait a second, well, wait a second. If it turns out they are going to be putting those people on a list for questioning or jailing or something, that's a whole different matter. But so far as we know, they're not doing that. They are encouraging. You said they're salesmen. They're selling the idea of getting the vaccine. And what we know so far is that there is data that having a vaccine is likely to prolong your life.
But Ben, how are they getting that record? I don't have access to this woman or man's record who comes to my door if they've had an HPV shot. I don't have access to their record if they've had a flu shot. How are they getting my medical record? Now, again, I'm proud to say I haven't had it, not because I'm anti-vaxxer. I don't trust it yet. And when this thing goes through the proper processes that the government has said it must go through on everything else, then we'll talk. But I don't know. I don't get to know the information about the people who are coming to my door. How does the government get my medical information, and how do they ship
they
it?
obviously have it. Robert or Bob, they obviously have it already, so it's a little too late for that. So what you're really saying is the government going to punish you for finding out that you have not gotten the shot? If that's true, that's very, very, very bad. If it is true, unless it's determined that by not having a shot, you are passing the disease along in a deadly form. If that's true, then let's find out about it and let's very strongly encourage people to get the shot. I still don't think these people should be jailed or imprisoned, but if we find out, and apparently we have already found out, that by not getting the shot, you are helping spread a deadly disease, of course I think we should encourage people to get the shot.
I'm reading many Republicans, many conservatives that are just. I mean, literally. I mean, that's the great thing about the show. We could agree to disagree, but I'm reading all the Republicans that or the conservatives that are frightened by this, including Dan Crenshaw, and Andy Biggs, and a bunch of people that just don't believe it's the government's job to know your health information.
Judah, they obviously already do.
Well, we don't know if there's a list or they're literally going to go to every. I mean, obviously there are certain communities that you could go on communities rather than a person's name, right? I mean, it's sort of an obvious thing that if Rob's County in Indiana has a lower, it didn't get as many shots per the census or per population, they know that community needs to be door knocked more. So I don't know if it's exactly they know your name, but they can get really specific demo wise. So
well, I think they do have your name though, because I've received texts several times from my state health department letting me know you haven't had your shot yet, and here's where you can go get it. That's a total invasion of privacy.
Well, wait a second. Yes, I agree. That is an invasion of privacy. An awful lot of what happens in daily life is an invasion of privacy. The fact that the various credit bureaus know all about your credit and what time you've been late paying a credit card bill, even if it's a mistake, even if, for example, your son has your credit card and he is late in paying a credit card bill, and that affects your credit, that not that has ever happened, but that in itself is a violation of privacy. There are lots of violations of privacy, and I agree they're all problems. None of them is a good thing. But we're talking about a pandemic. We're talking about something which could potentially kill a great many people. It has already, according to some data, killed several 100,000 people. That's a serious number. It just recently killed my son's ex-father-in-law. So I'm very, very concerned about it. I think it's a real thing, and I'd like to know, if there's a way of making sure fewer people get it, and if knocking on doors and telling people, excuse me, I understand you haven't gotten it, go get it, is a way of doing that, go for it.
And I guess it's 2-1 on disagreeing with this, but
this is a rather small sample.
I just said 2-1. That's our anecdotal data. Is I meant in the show, and it's all good. We could disagree with each other on this one. We don't have to agree on everything, do we?
Of course.
And Rob, that was one of the comments that I agree with everything. So we don't have to agree with everything. And on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to the lively discussion about whether the government should be door-to-door vaccine salespeople or
They're not selling it. As I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, as I understand it, they're not selling it. What they're doing is saying, we understand you didn't get the shot. There's a lot of data that says your health will be improved if you get the shot.
That's selling it. I don't know how you don't.
Well, they're not selling it in the sense they're not going to take out a little kit and shoot the needle into your arm.
Neither did the vacuum salesman. Usually didn't have the vacuums with them. You got the vacuum a month and a half later.
Yeah, but the vacuum company salesman got the check right away.
And these people are getting paid to do it. They are getting paid. I'm sure. I would venture to say, if you actually looked into it, they, like those people that have the lists outside of supermarkets and want you to sign up for stuff, they get more money per signature. I would venture to say that everybody that gets vaccinated, the people get probably a bonus for everybody they've gotten vaccinated. That's just, I could be wrong. I would love to see the data on that. But on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to that man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. I want to thank everybody in the YouTube chat for their lively conversations about this, and we respect everybody's opinion on this, and everybody's allowed to have one, and that's what makes us great. And we're joined tonight by an Indiana boy from an Indiana town, Rob Kendall from 93.1 WIBC, the unvaccinated man, and of course Benjamin Jeremy Stein, America's humble servant. Another interesting poll today, 36% don't believe that the country is being run by this person, Joe Biden, which is a frightening thing.
I don't understand but let me back up and say, at all times, I question how much of the government is being run by the president or how much of the country is being run by the government. I mean, there are an awful lot of other entities besides the government. And there's General Motors, there's all kinds of computer companies, there's Coca-Cola, there's Pepsi-Cola, there's High C, there's all kinds of other entities that run the country. I don't think the government is expected to run all of it, and the fact that Mr. Biden does not run a large part of the government doesn't surprise me. And in fact, I'm happy about it. I don't want him running.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. But the fact that 36% of the country, that's obviously one of the lowest numbers they've, I would love to see the other numbers, Rob Kendall, but that's an extremely low number of Americans that believe that the person in charge isn't the person in charge.
Well, I mean, you look at the guy and you would say, what has he done to prove that he is indeed in charge? What leadership has he taken? What has he actually done other than things that have been put on his plate with the stroke of a pen, drafted and put forth by others? What initiative is his own based on his 50-year public service record? I mean, he either was like Ebenezer Scrooge and woke up and was visited by three ghosts of uber liberals past, or the guy's being controlled by somebody else. I mean, it's a
I don't that part I don't doubt for a minute that he's being controlled by somebody else. I don't doubt that for a second, but I do very much doubt that all of American life is being, or even a very, very huge percentage of it, is run by the government. I mean, I think about my day today. Hardly any of it, as far as I can tell, was controlled by the government. So, I mean, I just got up late. My stomach was terribly upset, so I took a huge amount of medicine. I got, well, as I think about it, now that I think about it, some of it was government control. That's a good point. Okay, I'm going to rethink that.
Okay, Ben, I want to ask you a question. If you go back to the days of Reagan or even Trump and you ask people who's running the country, whether they liked him, how he was running it or not, most people would say the president was running the country.
I'm not sure that's true, but I think that a bigger point is one that we've just arrived at by virtue of having this useful conversation, and that is that the government does run an awful lot of our daily lives. I mean, for example, if I may, there used to be a very, very good stomach medicine that I took, and it was incredibly helpful. And somehow the government has leaned on people to take that off the market. It wasn't a dangerous drug at all. And so it is kind of scary to think of the things the government can do. The power of the government is overwhelming and kind of scary.
And I think, Rob, it's a bigger point than him running the country. I believe when you ask a question like that, the question is, do you believe that, that there's a certain amount of control, that there's a certain amount of everything's in place in case of something happening, that there's cohesion, that there's a team, there's a network that is actually caring about this country right now, Rob?
Well, I think a big portion of it is that he recognizes he's controlled by the radical left. And I think he is a guy who clearly spent his entire life wanting to be in politics, needing to be in politics. He's been running for president since I was 4 years old. I'm now a grown man in my mid-30s. I mean, so he is a guy that will say and do anything to hold on to that power. So I think as a result of that, you have a guy who's in clear mental decline, isn't as sharp as he once was a guy who at least professed.
You're a very generous man.
Well, I mean, look, this is a guy that I don't think really knows what he's doing a lot of the time. And so as a result, you have these shadow people who are calling all the shots.
I think that's right. That's a very good point. And what it would be awfully good if we could find out who they were. And if it's George Soros, if it's one of these crazy leftists in the Congress, it would be very, very good to know. Extremely good to know.
Well, I think there's a form of I think there's many different areas. I mean, obviously, big tech is helping is a huge part of running this country right now. I mean, obviously, the media and big tech are massively running this country right now. I think we have absolute data on that, Ben. That the companies
how would you say I think they're running a very, very important part of it, which is free speech. A hugely important
That's
part
the First Amendment, yes.
Hugely important part of it. I don't think Mr. Biden thought that one up, but so in our investigation as we work through it on our wonderful little show, so if he didn't think it up, and if it's being done by the big tech companies, then it must be somebody either at or very closely controlling the big tech companies who's doing it. So who is that? I mean, there's obviously some gigantically powerful figures, or are some gigantically powerful figures in the big tech world who are calling the shots, and that's a good thing to know. Problem is, they're so powerful that even if we found out who they were, what good would it do us?
Rob?
Well, I think again it comes back to, we talked about it on the show before, the Section 230, the publisher and the platform. And the biggest issue here is you have a group of social media sites that are enjoying all of the benefits of being a platform, yet are behaving as a publisher where they're controlling all the content. It's fine. You can be whatever you want to be, and that's okay. But these people, because they're so big and powerful, are skirting the law. They're figuring out a way to have their cake and eat it too. We talked about last week on this show the shadow banning that goes on. And so as a result, you have the federal government working in cahoots with these big tech companies to stymie the American people.
Trying to get a cold Diet Coke, not easy to do here in Ohio.
It's one of the deprivations of being in Idaho. That and the
Okay,
internet
what's
service.
the link? What's the link between big tech and Mr. Biden and Ms. Harris? I mean, is there some entity, some committee, or some just a group of friends who are connected?
Well, no, it's the whole company. I mean, Ben, it's the whole company. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, the whole company is like if you take a company like Amazon, it's over.
Okay, okay, I'm just going to name you Ben's Devil's Advocate Stein tonight, because we know that Facebook and YouTube, we know that they censored and banned Trump pre the election.
Right, but I'm asking a more specific question. They have millions of employees. Which of the employees is the one, or are the ones who are doing it?
Going by the statistics, Rob, it's a pretty high statistics at these people's companies of people that are purely okay with this.
Well, I mean,
but are there 5 people? Are there 10 people?
No, there's thousands of people, Ben, at these companies.
Thousands of people are connecting with Biden? I don't think so.
Oh, 100. No, Ben, I'm not saying they're connecting personally with Biden, but thousands of people at these companies are building these algorithms that suppress people's thoughts, people's views. Thousands upon thousands of people at these companies. Yes, but Rob.
Well, the donation records show overwhelmingly that they support Biden, which is fine. It's their right, and it's the company's right to censor people that they don't like. But you don't get the freedoms and liberties and benefits, which are immense for these companies. It's how they avoid lawsuits. It's how they avoid many other things and get immense benefit from saying we're a platform. No, you're a publisher, which is fine. Be a publisher. Stymie whatever speech you want. But the government is the one who they work in cahoots with, which is now the Biden administration, the Democrats in Congress, to say we're not going to do anything to these people, even though we recognize and in many cases admit
we just lost you, my dude.
They're skirting the law.
I agree. It's a real problem. I think perhaps I'm not making clear to you, Judah, and to you, my dear friend Robert Kendall, what we have however many, 1,000,003 people, let's say, who work at Amazon, something like that, very large number of people. How many of them are briefed every day or know?
It's not a matter, Ben, it doesn't have to be coordinated. It has nothing to do with coordination. We know that after that night after Google, after Trump got elected, that they had a mass meeting of solidarity where they were all where at least 100 employees were in that room trying to console each other at Google. We know, Ben, we're talking about Google. It is a mass company. It doesn't. I'm not saying this is that on all cases it's a cabal, but the influence that one employee that's building a program, Ben, is there's a lot of employees there that are doing this. They've had whistleblowers from Project Veritas. We know that the heads of almost all of the major news outlets, Ben, are pretty much. I mean, I don't know what more evidence you want. I just don't.
Well, what I don't question that the powers that be at these big tech companies are very left wing, anti-Republican, anti-Trump, anti-conservative. I don't question that at all. I'm kind of interested as a political scientist and doctor, I am kind of interested in how the connection gets made. I mean, it's a hugely important subject. How does the connection get made?
Rob, you go first.
Well, I think you first of all look at the fact that the president of the United States was banned from Twitter for telling people to go home, and the Ayatollah of Iran is still on Twitter. That comes from the very top. There's a directive. It's very clear that
who is sending as a direction?
Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Obviously, Mark Zuckerberg is sending out directives. I mean, we know this to be fact and truth. There's no.
But who? You mean that Mark Zuckerberg has sent out an email to the employees of his company saying, from now on, I want you to build an algorithm that does not allow any praise of conservatives or Republicans.
100% it's coming from the top. I don't think there's any.
How does he communicate it to his employees?
It's if you want to work there, that's what you do.
But how does he communicate it to them?
Ben, I'm not on the inside of Facebook. I mean, whether it's via emails, this is why companies like Project Veritas, Rob, are so important, because they reveal what goes on inside these companies on mass levels.
Yeah,
I don't doubt it, but I'm very interested to know how they do it.
What do you mean? Hi, this is an email from Mark. CC.
Yes, I'd love that. If somebody could show that, an email from Mark to don't let anything pro-Trump ever appear on our platforms ever again, I think that'd be a very valuable contribution to the democracy.
It's not don't let anything pro-Trump ever appear. There are code words, there are buzzwords, there are certain things you can say, there are certain things you can be critical of. And the problem is there are people who arbitrarily make the decisions. When you get banned, you appeal it to someone. That person makes the decision. It can be a different person every single time. All it takes is one person, of which the vast majority, we can see it through donations, of these companies are not just left, but uber left, to look at this and go, yeah, that's a bannable offense. You're out. You're out for 7 days, or you're out for 14 days, or you're a permanent ban. It's an individual oftentimes that makes the call once something gets reported through the algorithm.
So then it's just an instance of mass hysteria within these corporations, that they all hate Republicans and hate conservatives, like some kind of mass hypnosis.
I've always said that was the greatest explanation for the Trump thing. It was the biggest case of mass hysteria I've ever seen in my life. But yes, these companies, Rob, suffer from mass hysteria.
Ben, have you ever called customer service before because you wanted to complain about something and try to get your money back or get a discount or something? You ever done that?
No.
Judah, you probably complained about a product before.
Of course, yeah, I did it the other night.
Oftentimes, whether it's your cable or your cell phone provider or whatever it is, whether you get a discount or a refund or whatever, depends on the person you get on the phone. It really is the arbitrary opinion of that person, whether it means sometimes they'll send it up to management, but oftentimes you could call within 30 minutes and get a completely different response. That's the way these companies are. But the vast majority of them are not just left, they're uber left with the directive on how they want things run. It's how the Ayatollah of Iran, who is a literal terrorist, still has a Twitter account, and Donald Trump got permanently banned for telling people to go home.
And
okay, Ben, I'll give you the best example. Ben, I'm going to give you the best example of this, okay? And this is a problem that a lot of people have with how hiring works. It's inevitable, but it happens everywhere, okay?
Yes.
You know me, you hire me. We are the same political, we're friends. I hire the next guy. We're friends. He's got the same political beliefs. And so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. So do I believe they're hiring people because of... No, you just hire who you know.
Sure, I'm very well aware of that phenomenon. Yeah. I wrote a book about that.
So
probably before you were born.
So that's what's going on. So that's what's...
Okay. So that's the end of it. They just all happen to believe the same thing politically. And I believe that's very possibly true. In that case, we are really fucked. It's really a terrible
Ben, I mean, yes, Ben, we are really, to use your language, we are really effed. I mean, we know this to be... Okay, do you know that there was a reporter this weekend for ESPN? Her name is Rachel Nichols. She last year got taped on an interview. She got taped talking about that she was upset with a black reporter taking, what was it, Rob, taking her job.
At the NBA Finals, she was a sideline reporter. Let's go down to the sidelines with Rachel Nichols. She'll interview the coach or a player, and she was upset that an African American person had taken her job, and somebody recorded her complaining. I believe it was to somebody that she worked with about that this was going on, a hotel room phone call.
And basically what she said was, I've had to work all these years and break barriers, but because of ESPN's diversity, their need for diversity, she, a white woman, the black woman trumped her intersectionality wise over her, Ben. And she had to come out with an apology on the air. She had to do all of these things. And so it's
horrible.
it's absolutely horrible. But like I said, but Ben, getting back to it, yes, we are being run by these companies. I mean, think about it. You use Amazon a lot, right, Ben?
Huge amount.
Okay, so every time you go on and you order a book, it gives you suggestions, right?
Not as many as I'd like.
But you know what I'm saying. The algorithm is giving you suggestions. It's giving you messages. That's what's going on, and it is frightening. But if you tune into, I mean, you could tune into any of these networks, Ben, on any night, and they all have the same message. I mean, Joe Biden. Yeah.
I'm only smiling because I wrote a book about this.
Then what?
Okay,
so then why? Then what's the question you're asking?
The question is now. At the time I wrote this book, the decisions about the political content of television are being made by a few dozen people. Now they're being made by millions. How is the same phenomenon at work when you're talking about millions? It was at work at the when you had just had a few dozen who belonged to a certain country club near where we live in Beverly Hills, and they were all pals, they were all rich, and they were all leftists, and they all got their views across. But now, is that true when we're talking about millions at all these big tech companies? I guess it is, and it's a very, very frightening situation. And how we escape it, I don't know, because even if we win the election, which we did when Mr. Trump won in 2016, then obviously the other side can still stymie us and screw us over mightily because of their unbelievable control of the media. How we get around that, I am not sure that I know, and I'm not sure anyone knows.
That's a great question, Rob.
Well, look, for a long time, the pushback and the equalizer was talk radio, and
talk radio.
I love it, man, and it's still very powerful and very influential. But let's face it, young people now are also navigating and drifting towards, the social media circles, through the big tech circles. And yes, a lot of those people are hyper liberal. They're hyper liberal companies, or they behave in a hyper liberal manner because they don't want to be boycotted. They don't want to be harassed. They don't want to have sponsors pull out on them. I mean, Major League Baseball moved their All-Star game because Georgia passed a voting bill that was less extreme than Delaware, where the president of the United States is from, and the Supreme Court of the United States just upheld most of it. Because why? Coca-Cola was mad about it. So you have a lot of these people operating out of fear because they believe conservatives will just go along with whatever and keep watching Netflix.
Well, I'm saying, again, for the millionth time, we are confronting an extremely scary story. But I think you've also mentioned now the way back, which is to get at the local level as many conservatives elected as possible, and have them pass law after law, appeal that when the ACLU challenges them, appeal that again and again and again. Eventually, a Supreme Court will come along and has the backbone to make it stick. And I think the great majority of Americans still do not want Joe Schmeckel in San Jose or wherever the Silicon Valley is these days, deciding what should be on the internet. And those people have enough votes to get us some nice conservative legislatures.
And on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. We've had some very lively discussions tonight. I want to thank everybody in the chat. I have been reading it. Sometimes it's very hard to do a bit of both, is focus and read the chat, but I have been reading all your comments. I know some of you agree with Ben. I know some of you disagree with Ben. Some of you agree with me. Some of you disagree with me. And that's how it's supposed to be. Disagreements are allowed. That's what separates us from them. But in the funny story of the week, one I find not funny, but the reason I find it funny is because a lot of people didn't know that Iran had a clock that had it was the death to Israel clock that the Ayatollah predicted the demise of Israel, the death of Israel. And the clock, because of their electricity shortage, shut off. And I find this, and the reason why this story is so important is because this should be been front page news that Iran, who we're trying to make a deal with, has the year that.
There you have an amazing story. This is a country that has a death to Israel clock, and probably somewhere else has a death to America
clock. Yeah.
And we are trying to be nice to them, be friends with them. It's a shocking development and a shocking betrayal of human values, a shocking betrayal of common decency. For gosh sakes, this country, Iran, has promised to have a second Holocaust in an afternoon, and we are trying to be friendly to them and be nice to them. What is going on? What kind of craziness is this?
And let's be real, the idiocy, Ben, of the students of the next generation who are so pro Hamas and pro don't realize, or maybe they do realize, and they're just absolute whatever. But Iran is sponsoring these terrorists, and
we're the worst state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and we're trying to be friends with them and to make nice to them. I don't get it even a little bit, except that it's a way of spitting at America and spitting in the face of the bourgeoisie. There's a very famous phrase from some French literature about why he wrote such and such a thing. And he said, pour épater la bourgeoisie, which meant to spit in the face of the middle class. And that, I think, is largely what's going on in the minds of people who create mass media and create the Democrat Party.
Rob?
Well, a big portion, I think, of the left's love of Iran is that Iran hates America. And
you know what? That's brilliant. And hates Jews. That absolutely, Rob might be the. Sorry, you win the award. That's one of the. That's brilliant.
That's why I'm here.
Oh well, we congratulate you, and your award is on its way.
Yes, your one moment of brilliance award is on its way.
No. He has had a lifetime.
Yeah, of course. And he knows.
Do I get a stay in Ben's Idaho condo? That would be wonderful.
Well, I don't know if it's that big an award.
It's 6 people in that room. And I'm just grateful his internet service survived the night. But Ben, if somebody would have told you, and your son brought this up to me the other night, and he goes, and your son, who's very impartial, had said to me, God, you guys have been shadow banned on YouTube. And I have the data on evidence from our downloads and via the podcast, and you could scream it from the roofs. But when your son said it to me, it was very helpful. It made me feel a little better to know that somebody that doesn't that you have to type in the full name of the show to get to the show is insane. Because usually the way algorithms been, or the way it works, Rob, as you well know, is when you start typing something, it starts giving you suggestions at a certain point. And I spoke to somebody else last night that had the same issue. They literally had to type in the full name of the show. And that is
shocking.
And that is, Rob, extremely unheard of.
Well, so think about this, and I can tell you it is true, because if you type in Ben Stein on YouTube, it's like the 3rd or 4th thing down are our clips now. It used to be number 1. But think about this. Like, they're in the business of YouTube is to get people to watch stuff, right? Like, that's what they want you to watch things, or they're supposed to. And yet it's so hard to find this show because it's what people would want to watch. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense if you assume that the real goal of the people who work at the show is to maximize the utility of the shareholders. The real goal of the show is to maximize their utility and make them feel like they're big mockers, as we Jews say, in the world of not only money, but in the world of politics. And I've seen this phenomenon in Hollywood too, very, very much so.
And by the way, just for the record, to come full circle, it wouldn't matter who was running, or I guess who's not running the country. I wouldn't be pro. I wouldn't be pro if Trump or anybody was hawking door to door the vaccine. But that's just me. And it doesn't matter who the administration is. This is an anti-Biden thing. If the Trump people were doing the same thing, Rob, I'd be against it too. So Ben, that's
you know why I like Biden,
and you'd be the same way. You'd be.
but you know why I like Biden.
Why?
You do not remember, even though we've been friends all these years. You do not remember.
Oh, because of the fried chicken from Delaware. Right. Yes, right. Joe Biden's redeeming qualities. He comes from a state with the best fried chicken.
Very good fried chicken.
And no, Ben, you've eaten a lot of fried chicken in your day. This is more than anecdotal data. You have real data.
I love fried chicken.
You have sampled fried chicken across America.
And I will tell you, there's a new brand of fried chicken, which my dear friend Bob, who's sitting over to my right, introduced me to recently, called Royal Farms. You know what it's called? Royal Farms, that you can get on the Eastern Shore of Chesapeake Bay. It's incredibly inexpensive and it's incredibly delicious. It is the absolutely best fried chicken I've ever had, and it's dirt cheap and it's just heavenly.
And I'm not going to say what it was, but both Ben and I had to do something, Rob, where we spoke today. And as we say, no good deed sometimes goes unnoticed or unpunished, Ben.
Unpunished.
And we both had it was pretty funny. I was happy that we were both misery did enjoy each other's company. But on that note, as we're running out of time, I want to tell everybody, like, again, please, I remind everybody, please, since we have been banned a lot here, we never know, please download the show as much as possible. Also subscribe to Ben's email. Call it the just in case email. And some great pieces are in there too. But it's benstein.substack.com. We might not be here. We might do Wednesday night, or we might do
Wednesday night. I think the thing is Thursday I'm going to be traveling.
Thursday you're going to be traveling.
I may be home by Thursday night.
So God willing, we will see you here Thursday night. I will put in the notifications on YouTube and I will send out an email. So if you want to come join us again, and remember, we're about love. We could disagree with each other and still love each other. Rob, tell people where they could find you every day.
Weekdays 9 to
naked
3.
On the streets.
Weekdays 9 to noon Eastern. The Mock and Rob Show, WIBC.com.
Bam. The president and future of conservative talk radio. And of course, you can find Ben Stein, spectator.org. Please throw a few dollars their way.
Great magazine.
They are incredible. And you could also find them at, you could also find Ben on Newsmax quite often, Newsmax TV, and a column in Newsmax. Ben, would you like to please take us out?
Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. I hate to leave you, but I really must say good night, sweetheart. Good night.